what you're doing like when you're not on the call is a huge part of the sales process, like proper follow-up, right? Pre-call process, like post-call process, like it's all the soft skills. And that's why I say is sales is 80% soft skills and 20% hard skills. You know, it's you can give the same script and the same sales frameworks to two different people, and one will just dominate, the other won't. And it's usually what they're doing like off the call.
So let's get into sales because this is your expertise. This is where you are. This is what you're good at.
Mhm.
This is how you're helping people and businesses really take it to the next level. So
Yeah.
and Taryn and I have a background in sales, but
Mm.
sales is changing.
Yeah.
Demographics are changing. And so how we approach that is looking a little bit different. So I'm really excited to kind of pick your brain about that.
Mm. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's kind of how I got my start. Well, obviously not like my first job or whatever, but yeah, when I got into the online space and stopped working like at a I was basically a social media director at a church, and I was also doing construction and painting and stuff because that's I grew up working for my dad, but eventually I started trying to find ways to just make more money online. That was kind of a thing back in 2016 to 2018 that was sort of popping off, and so that led me to starting my own agency where I was helping these like restaurants, and eventually I got into a niche of chiropractors and like helping them to get more customers and patients and practice members. And I realized like I was able to generate leads for them, and I was actually really good at that, just running Facebook ads. But they where there was always a drop off was on the sales side. Like I could send them all these leads, and they couldn't do much about it. And so that led me to start learning about it. And then eventually, I ended up on this sales team at this company, and it was like the perfect environment. It was like a crucible of like you had like there's no like if you were gonna be there, you had to be amazing, like elite level at sales. And that's actually where I met Cole, who later on we built. He was the founder, but brought me on early on and built Closers.io. And so over the course of working at this company that I mentioned, and then Closers.io, I we got really good, and especially like I was on the front lines. I was the only the sales rep at Closers when we were, doing, several million, probably like half a million a month in revenue, with very high profit margins, and I was the only producer on the team, and that was, again I got like just really like high level, like elite level at that, because I was just doing so much of it, and then I started being able to kind of get my hands in like a lot of other companies. I mean, Tony Robbins was a client of ours. Grant Cardone was a client of ours. Like Agora Financial, Frank Kern, Brooke Castillo, like all these, influencers and high profile kind of clients, and we were helping them with their sales process. And I found that, number one, most people, like most businesses, just don't. I think there's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what sales even is, and you typically fall on just like old school tactics like freaking Sandler or whatever, and it's so
Tried and
outdated.
true.
Yeah. It's like, I know, like Sandler's like like the grandpa is just like, still holding on. And it's like, bro, like just, yeah, but no, but it's usually a breakdown in that, and they just fall on old methods, and they don't so yeah, they don't have like a modern kind of process that works today. And I think today, in today's market, you have to, like, I'll say this is like number one is having more like permission based language. um is so important. And like I think along the sales cycle, the one thing I noticed, just being on the front lines, is that people love to buy. They love to buy. They hate being sold to,
Mm.
right? They don't like feeling like they're in a sales process, and so you have to engineer and like really design a sales process that where you're consistently removing the sales resistance, and by making them feel like they're the ones leading the engagement, right? So it's like very subtle, and there's just ways to do that. Ways to do that with certain words that you say, certain words that you don't say, and so that's number one. Number two is actually what you do like off, what I call off sales call, because like most of my clients are like remote sales teams. So it's like what you're doing like when you're not on the call, is a huge part of the sales process, like proper follow-up, right?
Mhm.
Pre-call process, like
Mm.
post-call process, like it's all the soft skills. And that's why I say sales is 80% soft skills and 20% hard skills. You know, it's you can give the same script and the same sale frameworks to you know, two different people, and one will just dominate, the other won't. And it's usually what they're doing like off the call, you know. And so and then at the end of the day, here's like the big thing I say is, obviously we've taken a lot of time today to talk about leadership and culture, and this is actually like where I developed a lot of my leadership understanding, was because salespeople are the hardest to lead, the hardest to hire, and the you know, the hardest to train. They're just, it's like, if you want to get really good, the only thing I can say that is harder is like, if you have ever worked at it like a, or been in leadership at a church, volunteers, man. Like if you like
That's
like
real.
like
I say an amen to that.
yes, yeah, like years when I was like 16 years old, I was like leading a youth, or I guess I was actually 16 to 18. I was leading like a youth worship team. I was like, oh my gosh, these like teenagers and they're volunteers, and you're just like, oh my god. But
That's
that was maybe the
hard.
only hardest. After that, I would say salespeople.
That's
Like,
hilarious.
yeah, it's like salespeople. So they're the hardest,
What
and
makes them so like difficult to?
I mean, you're talking like high ego, high
I feel
competitive
seen.
energy.
I feel seen. That's
Like,
just,
are you talking about volunteers or salespeople?
No, sales. Well, I
Yeah.
guess both. But
Yeah,
sales. I
salespeople.
could assume the volunteers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, yeah, it's a high ego, high, just strong personalities, like a lot of competitive, you know,
Okay.
energy. You know, there's usually just, especially if they've been in the game a long time, they're very set, like they think they're the best. They don't, you know, it's low, like to be good at sales, you have to have high awareness. And so, and like we were talking about earlier, is like humility, is like, these things are so important. And so so all these principles are the same. And that's the thing, is like, I've learned leadership because sales is leadership.
mm-hmm.
That's all it is. You're leading people into doing making it the best decision for them, which typically what's best for somebody is outside of their comfort zone. And that's, or else they would have already done it. Right. And so, so that's where the salesmanship comes in, is, you know, is understanding human nature will fight to the death to stay inside their comfort zone. And so that, like, you have to be good at persuasion and leadership. And so all these things are the same. If you can get good at sales, you can, I'm not saying you will 100%, but you can be a great leader because the frameworks are the same. And so I was in sales as an appointment setter, and then I moved up to closer, and then moved up to manager, and I moved up to CRO, and then CEO and partner. And along the whole way, it was a lot of, I was just constantly managing, recruiting, dealing, leading, training producers, whether it was salespeople or whether it was like back end salespeople, like our account managers were in charge of hitting projections and producing back end revenue. And then, you know, ops people are like pretty easy, but the other ones are the tough ones. And that's where I got really obsessed. And I thought it was funny too, because, you know, I read like all the sales books and did all the courses, and where I found the most value, like what made me the best, like usually where I got better at sales the most, was just by reading like great leadership books, going to leadership conferences, like talking to great leaders, and realizing that influence, like if you're in the job, if you're a leader, a manager, a founder, if you're a salesperson, an appointment setter, if you're a customer service rep, you're in sales. Like you are in, your job is to influence people into doing what's best for them. And all the principles are the same. And so, yeah, so then, you know, when I realized this, I realized, okay, well, now I want to help companies create an amazing culture, or an amazing team to work together in the most high performance, effective, efficient, productive way, and so that they can scale and grow. And that means that everyone in the company has to become a leader, right? And so, but the easiest way to kind of get our foot in the door with companies is just by like sales. It's like it's like that's such a pain point. It's an easy fix. It's a quickest ROI. So yeah, most people come to us for sales, and then we kind of start there. They see the benefits, and then we can kind of start helping them with other departments.
So when you when you talk about sales and helping a company, what is your experience in when you're going in? Is it the script? Is it the culture? Is it what's actually when you first looking at, like, you're like, what is the first thing that needs to change here for this to change? You know, like when you're auditing and you're looking at it, like where do you start? If you're seeing multiple areas that need to be fixed, and you know they've got so much capital, right? Like they only want to invest in a certain part. Where are you starting?
Well, okay, so I'll start with a sales audit. That's usually what I do. It's like I need everything. Like I want recordings of the sales calls. I want your script.
The process, all of
I
it,
want
yeah.
recordings of the sales meetings. Like I'm
Mhm.
auditing like everything. And honestly, like my job in that at that point, because I think like a rookie sales trainer or consultant or whatever is usually gonna like they want to show off by trying to change everything. There's like this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. Just decimate your whole freaking like process, and then you're like, and they change everything. And guess what? When you change everything, certainty goes down, and
Mhm.
certainty sells, right? So then
Mm.
sales go down, and then like you lose a client, right? So my when I'm coming in, I'm doing a sales audit. Usually I see a lot of things, but I'm gonna find what's like the one thing that's like
Mhm.
the highest leverage, highest ROI thing. If we just change that one thing, so for one company, it might be culture, right? The culture on the team just sucks, right? So we do like a culture reset and things like that. Versus like for example, one company I just audited, it was by far it was just their pitch. Their pitch was trash. It was like
Mhm.
and it was like literally like that's the one thing I sat there for 2 hours and helped them and with the founder, and we rewrote an entire pre-pitch and pitch that was more congruent with a lot of their marketing and why people were buying. Like I
Mm.
watched calls and I assessed like why people buy this product and service. The ones who didn't, why didn't they? And usually it's like a lot of times there was kind of this lack of clarity,
Mhm.
and they had a lot of questions, and then they would end with I want to think about it, right? And so it's like, okay, we can just trim the fat and improve the congruence. So it's like, why did they opt into the sales process to begin with? What was it that attracted them? And then connect the dots and build a really like logical case. I call it selling like a lawyer. It's like you have to build a very logical case from point A to point B, and people still buy with emotion, but again, if they can't justify it with logic, then they don't buy, right?
Mhm.
So it's like it's like you need both. It's emotional and logic. So we built a great process. 2 hours time, literally the next day, I get a Slack message, and he's like, "Dude, like two for two,
Yeah.
like literally
Mm.
two, like the two conversations the next day, both bought." And it's like it was such an easy fix, And so sometimes it's culture, sometimes it's the pitch, sometimes they're not asking the right questions during the sales process, right?
Mhm.
So yeah.
That's so good. I was just thinking, we've talked about just a company recently, and when that congruence, when that consistency isn't there from the front end to like the
Mhm.
pre-sale, or those that are involved with the client on the front end to those that are like actually closing it or delivering the end product, when that congruence isn't there, it just disrupts the whole process. It also creates such a poor experience for the client that, like, if you're looking for increased sales, you want to have a greater impact, that referral, or that, hey, I had this experience, it was awesome. And so
Mhm.
it's not as hard of a sell if you're adjusting that, that sales process from the
Yeah.
start to the finish. And I think that's where you see, as companies are growing, they're failing to address like those important pieces, because that's where you can make a big impact.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
That's
also with the
good.
startup companies, these are people that are bringing their dreams and bringing life to them and building on it. And I think their proximity to their own business and their
Yeah.
own dream blinds them from it's a blind sight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they have these areas where they're like, no, it's fine. I'm like, no, it's not fine. Why would you even say that was fine? Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I think
Mm.
sometimes it's difficult being in it. And so for anyone who knows, like, after you're out of the relationship is a good idea. Like if you ever get out of a relationship, you're like, what was I thinking? Like, where did
Yeah.
I think that was normal? Or,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's like, well, why didn't we know that when we were in it? Because the proximity of it doesn't give you doesn't give you clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's the problem with a lot of the businesses is they're in the proximity of it. They're like, no, it's fine. Like it's
Mhm.
okay. And so for someone to be able to come in and be like, actually, here's all the holes,
Yeah.
and let us help you. And then they'll question, is it a hole?
Mhm.
Like, no, let me justify this hole.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that coming. And so getting people on board to be like, let me help you fix the holes.
Right.
And also not going in and I think also being, telling people everything you did is wrong.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Even though
right?
you might see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you're literally saying, you're like, this is all wrong. Like
Yeah.
everything is wrong. But they
Yeah.
built it. So you
Mhm.
can't say that.
Yeah.
And so
No.
I think it's just
Yeah.
kind of helping in that. And so has sales changed over the years in the way we do sales? And is the people buying being pulled by different things? Because when I think of sales, when I was a kid, I think of a used car salesman.
Right.
And I think of the schmucky kind of back and forth. And I'm not a negotiator. Like if I bought a car, I'd probably take my husband or Taryn with me because I'm
Yeah.
not negotiating with
I'll
anybody.
negotiate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a negotiator. But I kind of think of that type of back and
Yeah.
forth. Sales has changed. We don't sell like that anymore.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Because you were talking about permission-based selling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
let's talk
good-
more about
that's
that.
a good point.
Yeah, it's just keeping keeping things neutral. So like I
Mhm.
call it like a neutral frame. And so if you can from the initial engagement, like when you first kind of start talking to the customer to the end, if you can keep like a neutral frame, like you know, and what I mean by that is that you don't have an agenda. Like if they feel like you have an agenda, then they feel like they're in a sales process, right? So so it's again just staying neutral, keeping the attention on them, and kind of like leading with Socratic dialogue, like asking proper questions and keep in focusing on what's best for them, what's best for them, what's best for them, not like what's best for you, or not what was best for someone yesterday. It's just
Right.
like what's best for them, and so a lot of times, again, a great salespeople, it's not just what they do, it's what they're not doing. You know, like it's really common for like, you know, newbie salespeople to just be way too excited, right? Like imagine you get on a sales call and they're like, "What's up, Taryn? I'm so excited to talk to you today." You're just like,
I've been on that sales call.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
You're
would
like,
work on me. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just kidding.
That would?
That would work on me.
That would not. That'd be so draining.
Yeah,
I
I'd be
would
like,
feel
"Oh my
so
God."
happy.
I'm gonna need you to
like,
bring it down
wow,
a few
you're so
notches.
happy, you know?
Yeah. I know for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, you want to sell me something that like
Yeah.
you have an agenda.
Get to the point.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what is this? What's going on? But if you can just stay neutral, you know, and the whole time, that's the key. And that's kind of like, again, the like I was saying, selling like an attorney, right? It's just like, it's almost like it's like everything's intentional. It's more about what you're not doing than what you're doing. And for some people, I like to use the example of like a therapist, right? The therapist just stays neutral the whole time. You know, they're not like taking their side, but you're not against them. You're just making them feel seen, listening, understanding, asking questions. That's kind of like what a good sales process is like.
Yeah. Like guiding them through the process, right?
Right. Yeah. But they kind of feel like they're leading it, you know? So that's I think that's the most important thing with sales. It's like, it's a lot of what you're not doing. It's like too much enthusiasm, I think, kills the deal. I think
That's
Feels too
everything, by the way. Just everybody just calm down.
I know. Just relax. Whatever, just relax, please. That's me. Like sometimes that's like the most the number one feedback I'm getting. Like I say it so much to salespeople, I'm just like, slow down.
Yeah.
It's like there's just rushes, slow down. And again, asking more questions. Like when I train on objection handling, it's like it's so quick to offer something else, you know, and I tell them slow down, ask questions. So like if someone's like, yeah, I just don't think that's within our budget, right? You're getting a price objection, right? And they're like, oh, well, if that's not in your budget, try this. I'm like, no, ask, okay, well, so like budget aside, I just want to make sure, like, are you do want this, right? Like 100%, like this is exactly what you're looking for. However you want to say it. This is exactly what you're looking for. They're like, yeah, that's called a tie down. And then I go for a second one. Okay, so you're like, you definitely want this. It's just an issue of making the funds work. And they're like, yeah. They're like, okay, would it be okay if maybe we kind of have an open, honest conversation around your budget and see what would work funds wise, even if it's not a now thing and it may be a down the road thing. Can we have a conversation around that? Again, asking a question. And then they're like, yeah. And then you just ask, cool. So like, what is your budget? Like, what could you afford on a monthly payment plan or something? So, you know, you might have a conversation like that. And then I'm leading because I'm asking questions, but they don't feel like I'm forcing anything because it's all permission-based questions and language. And then I can understand what they can't afford. And then maybe instead of the whole thing, like I offer a payment plan. I say, what if we just break this up across like 6 installments that would fit within your budget? You know, you see, so like instead of maybe downselling to something else, which a lot of salespeople would do, because they're rushing it. They feel awkward. Now we're talking about money. I just got an objection. I don't want them to not like me. So they're just like rushing everything. So again, slow down, you know, isolate the objection, focus on what's best for them. Yeah.
So when you're going in, so you've done this so many times, like you go into a company, you help with their sales team. Do you start with sales team coaching? Do you start with leadership? Like does it matter?
No, I mean, it doesn't matter to me, but it matters a lot to them, right? So it's usually whatever they need. Like, again, companies may, I think it's quite common. The companies come to us that, you know, it's like a sales team thing. Maybe it's still like culture, like which we spent a lot of time today talking about, like the culture. And that's again, if we were to really sum up what we do at NeWell, it's that, right? We help companies to grow and to scale by creating an amazing like team dynamic, organizational health, and really eliminating the turnover and increasing productivity. That's like if I could sum up everything. But I think a lot of people maybe feel the culture issues like on the sales team, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like they kind of come to us saying, man, it's like I think like our sales team, I don't know if we just hired the wrong people, or if like we just our whole process sucks, or if like whatever, but people keep leaving, or no one ever hits their projections or quota or targets, or and so that's fine. I think it's a great place to start. So we sort of start with their sales team. I'll do a sales audit. I find the leaks, and then we plug the leaks, and then they are usually really happy about that. And then we just kind of start talking
Sure.
about, like, well, what about the manager? Like maybe we can start working with your sales manager, and maybe the chief sales director or whatever.
So I feel like too, the part of the reason why they start with sales is because sales is the quickest way to impact the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
The revenue to begin driving revenue, and
Yeah.
it's always like, oh, the problems with the salespeople because they're not bringing in the money,
Yeah.
and so because the people that are saying that are often the people that are not even tied to the sales team,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're not really
Sales seems the easy target.
right. They're
Yeah,
always the easy target.
Well, they're always high stress too.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
every company I've ever been in, the sales team is the most high stress. They smoke the most, they drink the most, they take the most energy drinks.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they take the calming gummies. Like, there's just too much going on here.
Yeah.
Like, and because they're sales oriented, and that is I think their strength, they don't even know how to fill the holes,
Mhm.
right? Like, they can be like, hey, this is like, this is trickling down to hurting the bottom line. They know that, but they wouldn't know how to fix that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's just a complaint. Like, sales needs to be better, sales need to be better, but no one's looking at the big picture.
Yeah.
Is the marketing good? Is something failing at the booking end? Is something we not following up? What's happening here? So I think every time I think of sales, I think of every company I've ever worked for, and the sales team guys, like, they're all the time. Like, it's always like this stressful thing. Like,
Yeah.
you don't consider the happy people
Mhm.
the sales team.
Yeah.
And so even though it's the bottom line, it seems like it gets neglected the most when
Yeah.
it comes to like what it needs to help.
Yeah.
I really do love the approach of NeWell though, because like you're going in, you're immediately trying to tackle like a problem and fix it, but you're also offering like something that's more holistic for the entire company.
Mhm.
And we've got wellness, there's like mental health and your leadership coaching. And I think sometimes what I've seen personally is that you have the solution is siloed. So you might have like a sales coach come in, or you have like someone come in and do some type of like incentive or program, or you have someone separate come in for leadership development, and it's not all like cohesive. It's not linked. And so the effort of the changes you're trying to implement isn't impacting across the board. It's just like one specific area.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it is all connected, and there's not a realization that it has to be that way. But I think that's where you see, and on your side at NeWell, where you're seeing the most success.
Yeah.
I love
yeah.
that approach.
That's true.
Yeah, it's like I think it's two people come to us for like two reasons. It's either the sales, like you said, and then it's the whole like land and expand. It's like I think they'll start working with us just on sales, and eventually it'll expand, or it might be like just like the corporate wellness. Like we had a company approach us, like it was like 2 weeks ago, and that was like mainly what they were looking for. And then like the more we talked, they were like really interested in like everything we could kind of offer, but it's like quick ways. Like they just want just the fitness, right? The corporate wellness stuff. Maybe not they don't really know that they need the mental health stuff yet, or they don't know that they need the executive coaching. And I think the sad part is that like the
They
executive
all need the executive.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
like exactly.
I've yet to meet anywhere I've been that doesn't need the executive
I know,
coaching.
I
They
know.
all need the executive
I know.
coaching.
Well, exactly. Like that's gonna have the biggest impact on your company.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's just the truth is that no leader identifies as a bad leader. You know?
Right.
So they don't ever think that they need it. That's not something that they're looking for. And then they usually, if they're going to do it, they want like a strong sense of like trust.
Sure.
And so if there's some sort of like, if we already have a relationship, right? Like if we're already kind of helping your employees with corporate wellness, or we're already like, improving your sales team, and if like there's already a relationship there, then like it can lead to the executive coaching, where eventually we'll kind of talk about like an executive package or something like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you kind of told your story, like how you got started on sales side.
Hmm.
Now you do some other things too outside of NeWell.
Yeah.
You recently had a book, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it, because I feel like it's an important piece of your story and
Yeah.
an important piece of just the direction and vision behind NeWell a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, where do I begin? Well, yeah, what's interesting is I kind of got into this, entrepreneurial season of my life and like that whole path, which had a, was very much connected with why I got into sales. I didn't like it. What's interesting is that I hated the idea of sales. It was my biggest fear, and it's because if you fast forward to, or sorry, rewind, I should say, back to, back like 2016 to 2018 time of my life. I grew up as Brandon, like not Mitchell. So later on in life I changed my name, but I was raised as Brandon. It's actually my middle name, but it's just how I was raised. And I was just ridden with a lot of depression and chronic depression, chronic anxiety, especially like crippling social anxiety. And I had a lot of issues like at school, and that's what led me to being pulled out of school. And a lot of it had to do with like my mom getting sick, and just it's kind of a long story, but uh, I was already like sort of hanging by a thread like psychologically. And then I find out that my ex-wife, not my amazing beautiful wife, is with me today, but my ex-wife, um, everything sort of fell apart when I found out she was having an affair. So she was with her boss, and it was like happening for like a year. And again, I was already like not in a good place. A lot of stuff that happened with my parents and my pastors. So I kind of I felt like, just cornered in life. And I needed something to go well. And then I find that out, right? And that's what plunged me into throwing like everything into like work. Like that became my identity, right? And at the same time, I grew up Christian and spirit-filled Christian. My mom and dad were in ministry, and so like that's all I knew actually was I just did ministry with them. That's what I thought I was going to do with my life. But then I had this like falling out with them. So again, this it all kind of led to this point where I threw myself into work, and I was just like, I'm going to figure out how to not be broke. Like if that's the one thing I can do. And so it was like this self-induced exposure therapy that I like hated myself. So I was like, my deepest fear is to talk to people for a living. But I just remember thinking like, if I could figure out how to, if I could get good at that, if I could figure out how to do that, like I could do anything. And so I threw myself into sales. And I mean, I still remember the first time like actually having to talk to someone. It was just the worst. I mean, he just literally was like this older guy, and it's like it never happened again. Here's the comedic part of this is like it never happened again, but it was like my first impression. So I thought this is just how sales is. But this guy just yells at me for like 20 minutes. He's just yelling at me and telling me how like I'm just this like I'm a piece of this and a piece of that and just whatever because I'm a salesperson. I'm a snake oil. Like, so, and
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
yeah, it was the
You
worst.
really encountered the worst.
Oh yeah, it was like
Why did he do that?
it was like the
Just
middle-aged
because?
male version of Karen. Like like it was the worst. And just teach me a lesson type of
Oh
thing.
wow.
And I was like, I remember I just like freaking like canceled the rest of my calls and cried and
Oh my gosh.
and
That's so
and like
sad.
I mean yeah I mean I'm exaggerating a little bit but like with the crying in bed part but no but legit I was like I'm not gonna take another call like today so I just like ignored it and then eventually just whatever just you get back to it and but yeah so I was doing I got into sales and like what's funny is I ended up I was like obsessed with which I don't think anyone really told me to do this but I just got really obsessed with like learning like I just kind of figured that I had this presupposition that I would naturally just like suck at everything and I didn't go to high school, I didn't go to college, like I felt like 10 steps behind and so I just went all in on like reading and like would like binge podcast courses. I was like maxing out credit cards. I sold my bed frame and like slept on my mattress on the floor just to buy a coaching program. I sold guitar pedals. I worked like 2 jobs and had a business and I was like doing whatever it would take. And I remember along the way I stumbled on this podcast with Patrick Bet David, and he's interviewing Kobe Bryant, and Kobe talked about how he had this this like this alter ego where he would get into character, and it was the Black Mamba, right? And so he'd get in the locker room and he'd just get into character and he said he would listen to the Halloween theme music and and just get into this like killer instinct mode and go out on the court and he would just perform. It was like no thinking, just execute, just perform. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of like familiar with like Eminem would kind of talk about how he had Slim Shady and like he had this alter ego. And then I realized I was really fascinated with films and actors and so like how they would get into character. And I sort of pieced this theory together. And I'm like, yeah, like I think, like I could just get into character, and I literally I showed her like the pages. I have my old journal and I drew like a line and I like had Brandon. I wrote Brandon on the left hand side, and then on the right side I wrote Mitchell, and I wrote like this character. I like designed this character on the right hand side, and he was this confident, charismatic, intelligent leader, great at sales, could connect with people. And so I would put on these glasses, and I'm not kidding. Put on these glasses and a little suit jacket that I got from like H&M or whatever, and I just would get on Zoom and I'd sell, crush it, and I'd get off and I'd go back to being Brandon. I was like, oh, it's exhausting. But
I feel that.
but
That's cool though.
yeah,
It shows that eventually you start to believe
yeah,
the
and
good
so
qualities.
exactly, it took whatever. It didn't take me very long, but eventually I just sort of realized like, wait a second, like I am who I choose to be, and like my identity is not. It's like I think that's the thing is like at the time I realized like my identity is like this concept. Like if I were to like cut open my brain, like you can't find like who that is, right? It's an idea, it's a belief system, and like humans tend to tend to like fall into behavioral patterns with who they think they are, not who they are.
Yeah.
And so, and it's again, it's who they think they are, and that's like the main point. And so during this time, I sort of was like running from God, and I call this like my prodigal son season, and I just threw myself into work. And so all that happened, right? I get really good at sales, and I'm making, I had these goals. I was like, if I could just make 10K a month, and then I make that. I was like, if I just make 20,000 a month, and I make that, and then 30,000 a month, and then 40, and then 50, and I'm just making more money than I knew what to do with, I ever thought I'd make, and I was still depressed. I was still empty. I still hated myself. Like I realized that these circumstances didn't fix anything, and the inner turmoil was still there from my previous marriage and my parents and just all these things. And so this one day, this is my rock bottom moment, and I'm at this again. I had this like I was like seeing this girl at the time, and again but seeing this this girl at the time with my ex, and I was just like, per usual, I would just like drown it in alcohol, and I'm getting like drunk and just trying to be the life of the party, trying to be awesome, like trying to be everything I thought people wanted me to be. And then she said something to me, and she said, "Stop, like you're embarrassing me." And that was like all that took. Like I needed just a little push, and I got like I spiraled, and it was like, it wasn't what she said, it was just that's where I was at,
Tipping point.
the tipping point,
Yeah.
and that's what I had this episode. So I'm like hammered. I drive home. Thank God he protected me, because I'm like going 60 miles an hour through a parking garage, like in my Tesla, and like I park and I get upstairs and I just start like there's these Perrier bottles everywhere, there's candles, and I'm like throwing it all over the place, like just like I text my suicide note to my friend Trent. I was like, I'm doing it tonight. I'm gonna end my life. Thank you for being my best friend that I ever had, and all this. And I remember it's like it sounds like a movie. Like I remember I slipped and I like fell into the glass. Like my hands are bleeding now, and I'm like still texting him. And thank God like my friend showed up. Like Trent hit up my other friend, and then who hit up my ex-girlfriend, all this stuff. And so everyone sort of shows up to stop me, and they call my sister, and she's like singing this worship music to me and kind of calm me down. And I eventually they're there, and I just fall asleep. So the next day I wake up, they're still there, and there's glass everywhere. And I'm like, stepping on the glass, like, trying to move it to the side. I'm like hungover, like, and I started to piece together again. Like, I'm like, oh my God, like I told him I was going to do the deed. I didn't. Like, it's humiliating, and I'm thinking like do they still want to be my friend? Like, what do I do? What do I say? Like, do I acknowledge? I don't know. Do I acknowledge anything? But they basically just helped me clean up. And then one of them like took me to like my office area and was like, you need to get on medication. Like you're not okay. And I was like, And that was almost like the tipping point part two, where I was just like, I was like, you don't know what I'm going through. Like, don't do that. Like, I don't want to, that scared me. I was like, I don't want to be on meds. Like, is it going to change me? Am I going to be able to work? Cause like, that was my life, like was work. And so they end up leaving, and I'm like, I'm not getting on medication. They end up leaving. And so I go back to my room and I lay on the bed. I look up at the ceiling and I'm like, do I need to get medication? Like, dude, maybe I should, like, what's wrong with me? And then I just start like the inner voice of like, yeah, it's like you should be humiliated. You're a lost cause. You should everyone's better off if you just like end your life. You should just die. It was like the voice, just die. And it was like, I was like, I'm like, no. Like, I'm fighting it. And then it's like, dude, through the chaos, through all the turmoil, I just hear this booming voice say, son, I never left you. And I like, the shocking part was that he called me son, and I knew it. I recognized that voice because that was God.
Wow.
And so I learned like the importance of identity, because I didn't do anything to earn the identity, but he called me son, and it changed it for me, because I realized we don't have to earn it. You don't have to earn the identity. You just have to, identity drives behavior. And so people make decisions in alignment with who they think they are, not who they are. And when you're a son and daughter of God and you believe it, the behavior comes, right? And so he said, Romans 12:2 says, to conform no longer to the ways of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so it changed everything. And I went down this path, and I rededicated my life to Jesus, and I got back in church, and I made better friends, and I just, it's like I actually ended up making more money. Like I got happy, I got healthy, I developed a community, and I really felt like a son, like I think I was orphaned, and so, I just like I normally do, I got obsessed with all of that. So I like studied the word, and I studied the science. I realized that I needed, like, on a physiological level, I needed to change some ways about my lifestyle, what I was eating, what I was doing. And then the psychology, I needed to forgive, I need to forgive my parents. I need to forgive my ex-wife. And I did. I went to them in person, and I forgave them, and I apologized, I owned my part. And so I realized like that's when I first kind of saw the triad. Like, we're a tripartite being. We're spirit, soul, or we're spirit, mind, and body. And like, if we're going to have this conversation around mental health, we have to talk about all three parts. And so that's what I wrote my book about.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story
Yeah.
and just being vulnerable enough. When we talked about just highlighting the book, I didn't know we would go so deep. So, but thank you,
I
because
thought he was just going to throw the link for Amazon, and that was going to be the end of it.
but no, seriously, thank
Yeah.
you, because I think often we don't get vulnerable. We don't have these transparent conversations about our struggles and our challenges, like where we've been, what we've gone through. But the identity piece is so key. And Julie knows me, I'm a crier. I can get emotional real quick. I'm gonna try not to.
She's a crier.
I know. Over here. But identity is so key, I think, in our success and the places we go, and understanding like we don't have to strive for it. And I think in your story, what you were saying, like in your work, there was such a level of striving and trying to overcome just shame or different objections that you felt like were coming at you. But the reality is all you had to do was just be. And maybe what it took was putting out your list of things like, what do I want to be, or putting on the glasses, or putting on the jacket, which I love that part of the story. But now it's like, through the renewing of your mind, you have become the person that God has called you to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful. So what is the book called? What's the name of the book?
It's called I'm Not Enough.
I'm Not Enough.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And so we can find more about the book. It's on Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And we'll link it too in our description. But so I feel like there's a lot of people that could relate to where you are in that orphan mindset and the story of that. And so NeWell is birthed out of this whole story of your life.
Yeah.
And so do you feel like this whole concept of coming in with wellness and development and all these things can help create healthier relationships, healthier people, healthier mindsets. Because one of the things that you had mentioned is like you're hearing all these voices. And so I always tell people, I'm like, who's telling the narrative of your story? If you let somebody else control it, they get to control the narrative of your life, and or you get to tell the story the way it actually is. You know what I mean? And so you were saying like you're trying to be all the things. And so as an introvert, I felt that because like introverts have to be extroverted. Because there was a time, I don't know, like if you grew up in church, I'm a pastor's kid. If you were introverted, you were just not qualified. That's what it felt like. You had to be extroverted. You had to be everything to everybody. And so I think just your story of coming into your own skin and being able like, okay, this is who I am. And so how does that feel now? When you think back, do you recollect those moments and think about how far you've come? Or does it still feel like borderline? How does that feel?
Yeah, I think I just feel more clear, I think, than I've ever felt, and I feel more comfortable, with who I am and who I feel like God made me. It doesn't mean that I claim to be extroverted, I don't,
Me either.
like there's times where I tell B all the time, like we have this thing called our social meter. And sometimes I'm just like, I'm maxed. I can't, like, I'm like, I can't, like, I don't want to talk to anybody. And that, so like, I'm still introverted, and I don't think I walk into like a social situation being like, oh, this is what I need. Like, I just need to be around people, like some sort of extrovert. But sometimes even the thoughts come. It's like a little bit of the awkward, like, oh man, like the anxiety might show up, but like, it doesn't last very long because I just remember, I think I've just practiced it so much. I've practiced mastering my own sort of like self-judgment. And I don't want to say I've mastered it. I think that's a stretch. I just think I'm learning.
But you've conquered it.
Yes, but I've conquered it. Like I can like do this. When like if you knew me, 10 years ago, I would not be able to do this, at all.
You're a natural though.
You're welcome.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So it's and I think I'm glad, like in a lot of ways, I'm so glad that I went through the process. And I think that's, people ask me sometimes like, would you, if you could go back or whatever? I'm like, no, like I wouldn't wish what I went through on my worst enemy, but I also like wouldn't change it if I could, because
Part of your story.
Yeah. Like when I look in the mirror, I'm by no means perfect at all, but I still am just like really happy. Like it's like who I've become and who I'm still becoming, and whatever God has planned, So, yeah.
I think there's a level of like contentment that you find when you really begin to understand your identity and the way that God has created you, even struggles and all. But when you are comfortable in your identity with the Lord, there's such a peace and a contentment that it kind of breaks off that like striving that you may have tried to do in certain situations, whether it be work or relationships, social settings, where it's like this like people pleasing mindset. It's constantly having to show up a certain way. And I think when you become secure in your identity, that there's not the pressure to do that anymore. And it makes such a difference in every area that you show up. So I love that story. I love that that's part of like the vision too of NeWell and just like your story, because all those pieces come together. We've talked about sales, we've talked about like executive coaching and all these different things, but it truly is like a combination of this beautiful thing. Like if you can work on your own personal development, your own personal growth, how well that can impact every single area of your life, as well as your teams, your corporate, culture, your company, all of that. But it always goes back to like the individual.
Oh yeah. Like if you're if you haven't like worked through your own wounds, I think I heard someone say it's like you end up like bleeding on your team or bleeding on other people, and it leaks, right? Our internal world leaks, and I'm very well aware of that, because it's like even today, like I go through certain challenges and I see it, like I see how it's like, oh, like that I can look back at certain like projects or things that I tried that I wasn't happy with how it turned out, and I can look back and I know it's like I know why, like it wasn't really it wasn't anything, it wasn't technical, it wasn't like, oh, the marketing was bad or whatever, but it's like I know it was like my own internal junk that I was kind of letting into that project, and it's like that's why it's fell apart. So but it's really important to get healthy and make sure you have the tools to whatever
Navigate
mission,
through
whatever
that.
assignment, right? Do have the tools. And I think it takes that outside help,
Yeah.
to help us to see those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding
think-
that expert. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also people miss the purpose of their life because
Mhm.
they stay in a wounded place.
Yeah.
And so what you see is we always talk about this. There's so much potential, but there has to be a part of yourself that wants to grow out of that and move beyond that
Mhm.
and figure out how to push beyond that. And I can't do that for you.
Yeah.
I can only see the potential, you know,
Yeah.
and so I can only push the potential. I can coach the potential. But there
Mhm.
has to be this desire within somebody to want to come out of that. And I think I think even just generationally, what's happening right now is everybody's being aware of that a lot more.
Yeah.
Like, hey, like, what's happening here? Why am I behaving this way?
Mhm.
Where did this come from? Why am I
Mhm.
doing that? And so I think we see a lot more self-awareness
Mhm.
that's happening
Yeah.
to become healthier people.
Yeah, I feel like personally, you probably see this too in like the wellness side. Like people are becoming more aware
Yeah.
and they're asking more questions.
Mhm.
And so, like whether it be diet or like habits, lifestyle, those types of things. And so they're saying no more to like the pharmaceutical side because
Yeah.
they're wanting to educate themselves more. I think in this season
Yeah.
than just taking someone's word for it
Yeah.
or a doctor prescribed something without knowing how it could really impact their future.
Yeah.
And so I think people in this season that I'm seeing, they're more in tune with themselves a bit more and
They're-
really trying to better themselves.
I feel
And
like
I-
they're also a little bit more interested in spirituality because of that reason too. And so I
Mhm.
think there's a rise also in like people wanting to understand that
Mm-hmm.
aspect of things,
Mhm.
the spirituality, the mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have a hunger for it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Mhm.
An authentic hunger to really grow in
Mhm.
the proper ways and not just something that's superficial,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about NeWell and we've talked about the book. Thank you so much for telling your story.
Yeah.
On the NeWell side, on the executive coaching, sales coaching, all those different types of things, you guys have some resources, I think, that are available
Mhm.
that are
Yeah.
in the works. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit what those are.
Yeah. Yeah. We have, I think there's like, three? No, I guess four. Yeah. Now that I think about it. Yeah. If you just go to the website, newell.io, so NEWELL.io, and there's actually like an employee turnover calculator. So if you're
Okay.
wondering maybe what your turnover is actually costing you, you can use that calculator, and it'll just tell you the number. And then we also have like a corporate wellness kind of startup like guide. It'll just guide you in like what how to do like maybe like a wellness workshop on your own, and some like helpful tips there, common pitfalls, as well as like a culture fix guide too. So just helping, like if you're an executive and you're like, how do I get started in this whole like culture thing? You can just go download that. It's completely free, and it'll give you some tips on like things like meetings and communication and things like that. And so
There's the guided journal, which
yeah,
actually kind of
Yeah.
comes from his book because it addresses the mind, the spirit, and the body.
Mhm.
And so every day you have a prompt, and then you also have like a guided link to take a guided video on mindfulness and really like learning how to regulate your nervous system, and it just addresses all of those.
which if you hear how soothing her voice is,
You always
you can
have-
her voice is made for this. And so those guided sessions are by B exclusively.
I love
There's
that.
one by him. No.
No,
The other is.
just the welcome video, but I don't do like a guided meditation or prayer or anything like that. But you do them, yeah.
Yeah.
So she writes all those,
And your book.
records them, and
It's on
it's
there.
it's super awesome. So yeah, you can check those out. And then we are rolling out, probably by the time you're like watching or listening to this, we'll have the 8 SOPs, which is it's like just a digital product that you can purchase, and it's really affordable. And I think we're gonna release it for like $50 basically. And I don't know, that may go up or may go down, I don't know, but it's just gonna be a digital product, and it's like the 8 SOPs. If you've been listening to this and you're thinking like, what am I doing with my sales team and like the hiring and all this, I really try to, like, if you're familiar with the Pareto principle, like I try to take the 20% of all of these ideas and turn it into like what drives the 80%, like what's that little bit that drives the majority. And I package it up into 8 SOPs. So it's like the 8 SOPs that I use to scale a sales team to 4 million a month, because that's when I was the last sales team that I ran was doing those numbers. So So it's really actionable, really tactical. You can buy that. Check it out. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Like seriously, chatting with you guys, hearing your story, and just how you've come together to build like your history, both of you. And we look forward to more conversations.
Yes.
But it's just been great. So thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for
Thank
having
you
us. Yeah.
guys.